Or a bicycle helmet.
That is my professor. His name is oh, that's a different one. Jeffrey Black.
All right.
This is Jeffrey Black.
Thank you.
Can you hear him?
No.
I might have not. Oh. Whoa.
I can hear you.
Okay. Hold on. Stop sharing my screen. Share my screen. It's because I can share audio like a smart. Okay. Can you hear him now?
Yeah.
Activities and introduction to wildlife class. I'm out here at the edge of Humboldt Bay again. Finally, I can breathe. No smoke to be seen or smelled. And, welcoming some of the ducks and geese that have arrived here on migration. And thinking about what we're going to do this week. You know how I've asked you to read this book? Well, there's a documentary that I want you to watch as well. It's called Racing. It's pretty powerful. While you watch it, I'm also going to ask you to think about environmental ethics for 6 flavors. Here's a little activity for you after you watch that. So last week we had a documentary. This week we can have a documentary.
Which I appreciate.
And there'll be a few activities. And that'll lead us into Friday's discussion where we'll continue to think about endangered species and how we are managing or trying to conserve endangered species on the planet Earth. There are so many wildlife biologists, conservationists, activists working towards saving our species. I'm going to introduce you to a body called the IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature. We're working on this today. So maybe you will join them in the process. Join us in the process of discovering more, monitoring, and studying how we can save our species.
I think it's like a mosquito something on his neck. There's something on his neck. Okay, so
Oh, you're loud.
That was the.
Either turn
Was I?
Well, you're loud, but he's not. So if you could turn him up more, then I could turn you down and still hear him.
Okay, so what you can do is you can turn me down in Discord.
Ah, genius.
So
Absolutely.
you basically come down into Discord and you right click on my name and there should be like a little way to turn me down.
Use your volume. Say something.
I have you turned down.
If I turn you down, I can turn everything up. Can you make sound go sound?
Sure.
Play
I'll restart the video.
Hey, Wildlife 210. Welcome to the next week
How's that?
Activities and introduction to wildlife class.
That's actually really good.
So I'm out here at the edge of Humboldt Bay again.
Yeah, say something, Shay.
Breathe. No smoke to be
Say something
Hello.
else.
smelled.
Something else.
And,
Something else.
welcoming some of the ducks and the geese that have arrived
Oh.
here on migration.
Fuck, I'm getting like a pulsing pain in my left eye. Fuck. Okay, so, oh, fuck.
Did you see the picture that I sent you earlier?
Hold on, having an aneurysm.
No, it's called having an Annie now. I like that, and yet I don't.
It's an aneurysm.
I know what it sounds like. Is that I'm having an Annie with you and evil and bad.
Oh, fuck. It hurts. So this is only 5 minutes long. It's his lecture for the week.
Okay.
How does that sound?
I hear nothing.
Good?
I don't hear anything.
Oh, because I'm an idiot. and didn't show the sound again. Oh, I never share, so I don't
neither. I
know.
always forget. I would hope it would be default, yet it's not.
Yeah, it should be default.
Hello, Wildlife
There it is.
10.
Good.
Welcome
Yep,
to
really
the
good.
next lecture.
Balanced nicely.
This one's going to be brief.
Chicken.
IUCN stands for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It's a group that's based in Switzerland, actually, but they organize all the world's scientists who are working on endangered species around the world. This group, the IUCN, has categorized the level of threat on all the world's species. Endangered or threatened or vulnerable. We're going to try out their webpage, which is a little assignment for you this week. The categories that they use are listed here. Go get some more data on the species. There's data, but least concern. We're not concerned too much about this species. Next would be near threatened, and then vulnerable, and then endangered, critically threatened. Oh, extinct already in the wild, brought in, and extinct completely. Here's the definitions for each of these. I'd like you to actually learn these, and I'll include it on a future quiz. I had the pleasure of working for the founder of the IUCN. His name was Peter Scott. He was an English guy, and he also started WWF. I've heard a little bit about him. And he also started WWT. WWF is the World Wildlife Fund. WWT is the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust. It's also in England. And Peter Scott, lived there, and he had a collection of all of the endangered ducks, geese, and swans. That's where I come in. Hey, look at this guy with the beard holding the swan, so the swan didn't bite Sir Peter. Who is that guy? Peter and I, back in the 80s, both wore Elton John glasses. It was great times back then. Together with the scientists that worked at the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, we organized IUCN's cataloging of all the endangered duck species of the world, working with workers in every country.
Oh, I do have a request because I'm getting a migraine from it, I think.
Yeah, what's up?
I hear a lot of feedback. I hear him talking through your screen.
Okay.
So it either has to be I mute you while we're watching the video, but then we can't talk, or you wear your headphones. It's really bad.
I hate headphones. You mute me, and we chat on chat.
I'm down with that.
Okay.
I'm down with that.
All right.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of working with these 4 species of wild geese. Top right, ocean geese, right around here. In the middle, the red-breasted geese, over in Siberia. Down bottom right, the barnacle goose, which is portrayed on your syllabus and on our Canvas pages. Above Norway, we would go into the Arctic to study them. And Sir Peter asked me if I ever wanted to warm up, or did I like to be cold all the time in the Arctic. I said, oh no, yes, I would like to warm up. And so he asked me to study the one on On the left, the Nene, or the Hawaiian geese. So for 10 years, back in the 80s and 90s, I worked on barnacle geese and redbreast in the summers, and then got to go to the Hawaii in the winters to work on Nene. When Sir Peter started working with them, there were only 20 left in Hawaii. But now, after years of hard work from a variety of folks and agencies, we can now boast that it's no longer endangered. It's recently been delisted to only the vulnerable status. But it looks like the population is now increasing, which is wonderful. Perhaps you will one day have the honor of working with and bringing back endangered species from the brink. That's the end of today's lecture.
I realize. Wow. There we go. I'm like, I tried to open the window. What's going on?
The IUCN Red List is the world's most comprehensive information source on threatened species, their status, and their links to livelihoods. More than a list, it's actually a barometer of life, measuring many of the threats faced by the species. From the IUCN Red List, we can find out whether a species is being overhunted, whether it's protected by international law, and whether it's important for human livelihood. It will tell you if biological traits, such as slow reproductive rate, make a species susceptible to overharvesting, and whether restricted range makes it vulnerable to climate change. As a filmmaker and photographer specializing in threatened species and habitats, I consider the IUCN Red List to be an important resource for guiding my work. I have personally had the great pleasure of seeing and photographing many of the listed species on my various assignments. The IUCN Red List is an incredibly powerful tool used by many decision makers, including government, NGOs, scientific institutions, and the private sector. For example, it is used to guide scientific research, inform policy and conservation planning, and improve decision making to protect the natural resources on which we all depend. More than 70,000 species have been assessed so far, and the results are disturbing, with many species groups facing a high risk of extinction. 41% of amphibians, 25% of mammals, 13% of birds, 33% of warm water leaf-building corals, 63% of cycads, and 34% of conifers are threatened. The IUCN Red List is compiled and managed by a network of more than 8,000 species experts from around the world. Each year, more assessments are added, continually improving our knowledge of life on Earth. Our target is to assess a total of 160,000 species by the year 2020. Help us make the IUCN Red List a more complete barometer of life. Help us save threatened species around the world. We cannot do this without your support. Please join us. Visit iucnredlist.org/donate to make a contribution.
I was reading the Financial Times, and it was a little tiny story that said, mankind may be causing a mass extinction event. It was like buried on like page 6 or 7, and I thought, this is how humanity is dealing with the issue. They're not dealing with it. Check your cell phone. You get anyone near this place, he scrambles the signal.
Holy boy.
Just how many cameras do you have on you?
You mean like on my table or
No, on your body.
on my body? Less than 7, but probably more than 2.
Okay, so we're doing an order here. 1.5 cam, 2 buttonhole cameras, sports bra, 1 bottle cam, 511 texture, with the vibration.
Oh, yeah.
So you're rolling right now. So you can get the evidence and make sure that we're subscribed.
Okay.
Your reservations in 10 minutes.
She brought me here.
Have very exotic tastes.
Yeah. I've been having sushi so far.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
The owners and chef of one of America's trendiest restaurants are facing federal charges tonight, all because of what they put on customers' plates, an endangered species. And behind the undercover sting, some movie makers who have went right back to work.
We're making our own road here. I did 4 stories about extinction for National Geographic magazine. We go through these beautiful landscapes. There's dinosaurs from horizon to horizon. And you think, that was so far back then. What if it's going on right now? And everybody's missing.
Each year, about 1 in a million species should expire naturally. In the next few decades, we'll be driving species to extinction 1,000 times faster than we should.
It's difficult to estimate precisely how many species will lose. In 100 years, it's likely we can lose up to 50% of all the species on Earth. I remember thinking this is the biggest story in the world. It's like we're living in these dinosaurs now, but we can do something about it. Blue whale is the biggest creature that ever lived on the planet, bigger than any dinosaur ever. And just like dinosaurs, they're going extinct. Oh, look at them. Back in the days of whaling, they were headed to near extinction, down to about 2% of their population. Now they're getting decimated by shipping traffic. Come out to the right. My hope is that if you can show people the beauty of these animals, there's a chance to save these things. One of the cool things about a blue whale is that it has the loudest song in the animal kingdom, but you can't hear it. It's below our threshold for hearing. We look out at the world through these eyes and these ears and you think, oh, that's it. That's everything that there is to see. But there's this hidden world on almost every level. What I want to do is get people to see it. We get off the boat, and this fisherman comes up to our interpreter and says, "Can you give me $500. I found this buoy. It's a $500 reward that needs to be returned up to America. And I said, listen, let me take a look at this buoy. And I look at it. It says, return to Chris Park, Cornell Bioacoustical Laboratory. I said, I know this guy. Chris had been pioneering new ways of recording whales for 30 years. He basically proved that these animals could hear themselves across oceans. And so, to me, finding that buoy is like finding a message in a bottle.
We built these recording systems. We drop them in the ocean, and they record continuously. Whales, dolphins, anything that's out there we try and record. For the first time, I knew there was a blue whale swimming nearby. I could see it on the display, but I couldn't hear it. What do you have to do? You have to speed it up. I still, the hair goes up in the back of my neck, and it's just like this. Man, that's bad. As we listen more and more on different parts of the planet, whether it's frozen Arctic Ocean or the deepest jungles of Central Africa, the whole world is singing. Clicking and grinding and whistling and thumping, but we stop listening.
The Cornell Bioacoustical Laboratory has the largest repository of animal sounds on the planet. They've been collecting them since the 1930s.
You can think of it as a museum, just like it could be bird skins or beetles packed up on the wall. So there's this range of sounds from the largest animals that live on this planet to the tiniest little insects. This is a song recording of a male singing on Hawaii. The bird mate for life, so he would be singing a duet with his mate, and he sings and she sings back and forth. If it's the male song, there's no response. If the male song again, that's the last male that's singing for a female. Will never come. He is totally alone. And now his voice is gone. In the brief lifetime of this collection, 70 years or so, many of the species that were recorded are now extinct. So the repository is a living example of the massive rate of extinction that's happening.
There's been 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet. There's the Ordovician, the Devonian, the Permian, there's the Classic Jurassic, and then the KT extinction, the one that killed the dinosaurs. It's very difficult to comprehend in deep time. 4.6 billion years of Earth's history. But if we take, say, the history of the Earth and try to squeeze it into a 24-hour clock, where does man fit on that clock? A few seconds before midnight. That's it. We're the new kid on the block.
What we're seeing now is called the Anthropocene, the new epoch. Anthropocene means the time of humans. It's when the impact of humans is leaving itself as a mark in the fossil record of the future. 65 million years ago, the
there was an asteroid that struck, and the dinosaurs go extinct.
When it comes to the 6 extinction event, we have no problem identifying the cause. Humanity has become the asteroid.
We're in that tipping point now, where it's either too late or just the beginning of a movement.
So there's 2 pieces of whale
At the Hump Restaurant, we knew that they were selling real meat. But there's also something bigger going on. We heard that the Obama administration was in closed doors negotiations with the Japanese to go do commercial whaling again. And I thought, well, if we could prove that endangered whales are being served right here on the shores of America, we'd stop that conversation. The Emirates community took it up, but the restaurant didn't close down. There was this one guy I'd never heard of before. His name was Adi Gill. He took some gear and put it out in front of the Hump Restaurant as people are going in. What are you doing?
I'm protesting. Yesterday, there were like 200 people here protesting, and I thought, somebody needs to keep the pressure on.
If you look at the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes, those are his screens, and that's all his projections. And so he parks his Ferrari right next to the van, and the owner comes out and tells Adi, says, how long are you going to be doing this?
And he thought I was just some hippie, going to be here for a day or two. I said, listen, man, I can be here for a month or 2 or a year or whatever. How long can you survive while I'm here?
10 days later, the restaurant closes down. To me, it was a beautiful moment. Everybody had gone home, and one guy's big bright light who keeps the light shining on the subject. There are thousands of people all over the world willing and able and changing their careers to save species. They go to some of the darkest, most unsafe places on the planet. Over 800 environmental activists have been killed in just the last decade. So these guys are doing that tough work. We never hear about them. They're not household names. Sean Heinrich. I live in Boulder, Colorado. You can't get any more landlocked in Colorado. And I found out that there's this incredible ocean activist living right down the street who quit his job as a CFO for a tech company so he could help save endangered species. Sean's doing some of the best, most groundbreaking work that I've seen anywhere in the world.
Isla Mujeres was the largest shark fishing island on the east coast of Mexico. At least 20, if not more, longliners were targeting sharks each and every single day.
Sean helped turn this hunting ground into one of the top places in the world where you can actually go and watch sharks.
Now you have this community of ex-shark fishermen who are making much more money taking tourists out to swim with whale sharks and killing sharks on longlines. It's just simple economics.
Sean often works with his buddy, Paul Hilton, investigative photojournalist. They can't help but to get themselves into dangerous situations.
Paul's photojournalist, like me, focused on endangered species. He's brilliant at what he does.
Paul and Sean try to bust rings selling endangered species.
Well, the little opportunities, right? Sean's pretty cool on. I love his enthusiasm. He talks far too much when on assignment, so there's always that issue of me having doubtings. He may wind it up. I think it's the American in him. And a lot of the situations you go into, it's always nice to go into teams because you're going into situations where you get caught up in the moment with the camera and you'll actually photograph it, and there's no one watching your back.
Paul and Sean have this technique of they have a camera sitting on their neck, and most people think you have to put up your eye to look through it to shoot. It's actually a video camera that's rolling the whole time.
So many. And this is the Jaws movie Jaws. Okay, cool, very cool. I don't know about you, that's one of the things I've ever read.
How did you find out about this?
Facebook, basically, and then colleagues' mates. And just connect straight in, basically.
Wow. How long were you there?
10, 15 minutes.
You did all this in 10, 15 minutes.
Are we almost there, Paul?
I didn't think that the illegal wildlife trade would be so overt. You could go down the streets, and every other shop would be full of endangered creatures. It's not just shark fins. It's just about everything endangered in the world is for sale there.
With the explosion of demand in China for shark fin soup, it was estimated that 250,000 sharks were caught every single day.
I don't know.
Probably no other species illustrates what's going on in the ocean right now than the sharks. Sharks predate dinosaurs. They survived 4 massive extinctions. And in just this one generation that I've been alive, we've cut down the rank about 90%.
I was following a group of shark finners in Indonesia, and they were moving around camp to camp. And then one morning, I saw something reflecting off the quality in the shallow water.
I'm looking forward to getting up early Saturday morning and having fun on the jacket.
It's this beautiful polymer shark, but it had all its fins cut off. And it was trying to swim, but it couldn't swim. It was heartbreaking. It's like, this is what the reality is. This is the thing that nobody gets.
I wonder if you do that a lot. But that's still, we had to refill it. They'll fill it for us over the weekend. Okay. And then we'll go back up for Monday. Clean up the rest.
How long am I going to be paid on?
I don't know.
I mean, is it going to be company salary?
Okay.
Sean
I don't
has
know.
been tripping.
Yeah, it'll probably be a check. I'll probably give, they'll probably just give you a check like they did last time.
China for several decades. The first place she took us was a place that they couldn't ever get into.
I'll just have them pay me.
Basically, Walmart,
Right.
distribution trade in
Right.
Hong Kong.
Yes. Yes. I've watched this. I'm
Over the years, I've actually worked really hard to get into this facility. So has Paul, and so has his friends. And you managed to make me step in the door for 30 seconds.
Hey, what's wrong?
He stops, pushes away, threatens to call the police.
Hands, machete, kicked out the door, don't ever come back.
That's what we do. We have the car waiting and stuff. I brought along a couple of colleagues from Humphrey at a rally who does undercover work for us. Charles Hamilton, who's sort of my director of corporate operations. We invented a cover. We pretended like we were on a culinary tour and we were looking for exotic products.
We stick the plan. We're going as culinary tour. She introduces Mr. Sawyer, and we're all here learning and taking pictures of culinary.
You can get into about as much trouble as you possibly get into with a button camera in China.
For some reason, when you run into people with badges and uniforms, strip off all the shit, just rip it out from under your shirt and throw it over the wall.
All right, in. Go in.
What is the business you are doing, growing product?
We're starting a business where we want to sell seafood. We have a seafood shop. So back where we do it, it's just mainly tuna and marlin, swordfish. They want to see something more exciting.
Because the Chinese traveler and the Asian traveler has become big business now. It's more than 50%.
We should go. We should probably go.
No.
I saw you around here.
This is nice.
Yeah.
I need to go back to that.
There's a mess.
Oh, thank you.
If you get the stuff, every part of the stuff can be sell and money. So we are not going to throw any meat on the stuff. But a lot of green people, they are misunderstanding our industry. They thought that they take the meat and then let the livestock go down into the sea and die struggling like this, very bad. But that is not the truth. That video is made by the greenies themselves. Look at, this is the worm.
Are these expensive also?
Yeah, very expensive. Yeah, biggest one is $44,800 per kilo. $44,800 per kilo. It is a wholesale price.
No way.
They delete. That's why I think they delete can cure the cancer. Chinese, I have a lot of delete.
We ended up going down the road to another warehouse in the on waterfront.
Sorry? Look at this.
It must have been 10, 20,000 things in one location. This was the biggest facility on the planet.
The scale was just out of control. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. I feel like this world is absolutely insane. I remember once diving the northernmost islands of the Galapagos, Darwin Island and Wolf Island, the islands that Darwin actually never had been to before. It's the land before time. I mean, it's like land before humans got there. I remember this giant whale shark came by, and a pot of dolphins came by. This is back when we shot film. And the whole frame was just filled with wildlife. This dolphin came swimming from behind one of the whale sharks, and it grabbed this tuna, and it brought it, looked right at me, and shook it. And it swallowed it tail first down its throat. And I thought, this is when you want 37 pictures of a 36 roll of film. It was magical, absolutely magical. As underwater photographers, or journalists really, we're documenting a time and a place that in the future may not be there. And the clock is moving.
The first photographs I shot of assignment from National Geographic, 1960, I took a total of 7 or 8 frames on 2¼ square film, on Ektachrome film, and threaded them together. The first underwater color panorama ever found on the reefs. This when I came back in 1989. If these were very early floors, went to hell.
Now I'm looking around and saying, well, what happened here? It's not so far off from what happened 65 million years ago.
Extinction is often being driven by direct human activity, things like habitat destruction or overfishing. And then there's global climate change, which is happening in a different way. There's sort of dual things, like the direct hand of man and the indirect hand of man, which is the climate. Climate is controlled by the ocean. The oceans are the big guy, they're in control. And the oceans now are slowly changing. And that is the danger we face today. A mass extinction is driven by a change in the environment. And we are changing the environment
precisely along the lines that we trigger off one of these great catastrophes. There's been 5 mass extinctions, and they've had different causes, but there's been one common factor in all: a massive increase in carbon dioxide. And we've never had a carbon dioxide spike like it's happening now.
We are burning through fossil fuels laid down over hundreds of millions of years, really reversing geological history basically, and we're doing it really, really fast. In the Gulf oil spill, about 12.9 million barrels of oil was spilled. That represents about a quarter of what we use every single day in the US.
You look at an event like the Gulf oil spill, you think this is the biggest environmental catastrophe in America ever. But that spill is nothing compared to the damage caused by us doing everyday things we don't even think about. And I'm more guilty than anyone. The worst thing you can do to the environment is make a film about it. We did a carbon assessment the first 2 years of production, and I was horrified at how much energy it takes to do what I do. We're at the point where we're making our lives a lot better for us. But we're doing it at the expense of everything going forward. We have many, many ways to fix this problem. The question is, are we going to do it fast enough?
They had good detail.
Driving this out of control.
They had a really good detail.
The ocean's chemistry is changing really rapidly, scarily fast. When we put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it doesn't all stay there. Between a third and a half gets absorbed by the oceans.
The CO2 reacts with water to form something called carbonic acid. And each year the ocean becomes more and more acidic.
If you want to know what that does, get a seashell and drop it in a glass of vinegar. A whole variety of creatures is simply dissolve into the acid ocean that we have created.
There's massive death in the oceans. It's already started. Oh, it's not started, it's well on the way.
Those are larvae? Yeah. See the brown smudge? Yep.
Each year we harvest 7 to 10 billion oyster larvae that we send out to growers throughout the Pacific Northwest. I still remember the day all of the larvae essentially in our entire hatchery were on the bottom of the tanks. So 6 billion larvae all died in a single day.
That deep ocean water off the coast of Washington and Oregon comes into hatchery intakes. They can't grow their shell. Growing faster than they can grow.
It seemed outlandish to think that the ocean could be acidified enough to cause us these kind of problems. It just seemed like something for the distant future and nothing we ever had to pay attention to.
The rate of change that we're seeing in the ocean and the change that it's going to create in our food chain, it's going to be dramatic, and it's going to be in our lifetimes. The things that we're used to eating may not be available anymore, and we may need to transition to eating jellyfish or something like that. So it'll be a trend.
It sounds a bit silly, change your diet and save the planet, but if humans could become vegetarians now, you would make a massive difference.
By far and away, the biggest factor in terms of this mass extinction is destroying natural habitat or converting natural habitat into land for food.
The more dependent we are on meat, milk, and eggs, the greater the CO2 and methane emissions. Cattle and ruminants
plants of all kinds produce methane as a byproduct of breaking down grass and other things that they feed on.
So the contractions are pushing this gas out from the stomach, going through here in the one-way valve.
Yes, and after we collect inside the bag.
So how long has that bag been collecting gas?
Only 2 hours. Methane is something like 22 times more potent as a climate change in gas than is CO2. So it doesn't take very much methane to make a difference.
A cow can basically fill up a 55-gallon garbage bag full of methane every day. One cow's not a problem, but now we have 1.5 billion. And it's an incredibly inefficient way of producing food. 3/4 of agricultural land is used just to feed livestock. When you factor in everything, clearing of the land for grazing, feeding, transporting, livestock causes more greenhouse gases than all direct emissions from the entire transportation sector. I don't think it's a competition between these continents. I don't think one can be put above the other. It's like saying, well, is global warming worse than ocean acidification, or is fishing all the big fish in the sea worse than polluting it? And I think it'd be foolish to try and single out any one of them to say this is how we're going to fix the problems. We need to fight them on all fronts.
Still rodents. Look at this one. It's still alive. A lot of doors closed.
Lights going off? That's scary, man. They were definitely not welcome here.
In 2000, the government clamped down on the wildlife markets across southern China. So things started to go down the ground, so operating in early hours of the morning. And it's horrific.
They're shutting down. They're shutting down.
They're hiding it now.
Oh my gosh.
This is a market that has to switch places twice that year.
Oh, what are they doing?
They know they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing.
That's hardcore.
The more endangered it is, the more illegal it is, the more you have to go to the back rooms.
So Louis, I want to show you something right here. You're looking at a dozen manta rays sitting right in these bags right here. When you consider that each of these animals has one pup every couple of years, you're looking at literally an entire generation wiped out just in these bags. A few years ago, I started noticing species of manta and mobile ray lined up in the streets in areas that used to be predominantly shark ports. And it was really confusing to me. I understood that you can't use their wings for shark food. And the meat from these rays is very pungent. It's not worth the time of bringing in these huge, heavy animals.
I couldn't believe I walked in with just giant oceanic mantas all lined up in a row. And just trying to understand what was going on. And then I started watching them cutting out the gills.
The gills are missing. Where did they put them? Where did they take the gills?
And it came down to this. It was an old cultural remedy in a very small coastal town in southern China, and that was over 50 years ago. And that had largely disappeared. But I think it was just following the SARS outbreak. Somebody got it in their mind that, hey, we're running out of sharks. What other products can we move into the pipeline?
若干年前，中国药用的动物志，这是一本书，作为药印的编了一本书。这本书才记载了有福分鳃治疗疾病。
The gills of manta rays end up in all the traditional Chinese medicine stores and the dry seafood stores.
福分鳃的话，可以治疗很多，治疗直接大损伤，可以治疗癌症。这个是多半是因为开始是刘坚
He's not going to have many more chances to hit that. Well, I guess he could, but consent might be an issue. This is a little awkward.
I remember my first encounter with a manta in the water. It's something I'll never forget. I'm sitting in the water, and then just out of the blue, this manta ray does this huge flyby right past, and then goes back into the blue. And then I'm just left breathless, waiting.
Just recently, we were in Bali. At the end of the last dive, everyone's out of the water. And I look down, and this one manta comes right underneath me, and then just stops, and it hovers, and it's about 15 feet down, and it's not moving. I'm like, that's interesting. And I look, and there's a fishing line tailing off the top of its body. And the first thing I did is I swam down, I snipped the line off the top of its head, right just above the hook. And swam up. She didn't swim away. She was just hovering right underneath me. So I swim back down to her one more time, and I put my hand gently right on the front of her head, and I put my hand on the hook, and I slowly work that hook right out of its top jaw. And I thought, that's it. You know, she's going to swim off now. She's been saved. I look at her, she's circling right under my feet. So I swim back down to her one more time, and I put my hand right next to where the injury was, as if sort of rubbing it, saying, hey, listen, you're going to be okay. And I put my head right next to her eye, and I just remember her eye moving back and forth between my mask, looking at both my eyes. And realized that she knew I was trying to help her. Often people say, how can one person make a difference?
What if you could see how shark fin soup is made? If you could see how each year up to 70 million sharks are killed to end up in soup, could you still eat it?
I shared the footage of the live fin shark in Indonesia with Wild Aid, an organization that has been working with shark conservation in China. The film went to over 1 billion people in Asia. 80% of who were surveyed and saw it said they were either going to quit eating shark fin soup or drastically reduce their consumption of it.
Remember, when the buying stops, the dream can too. As a still photographer, I could see the power of an image. It was transformative. But I think it's in our DNA to take care of future generations. And if you can find that way in, you can reach people really quickly and change them.
The human eye is so limited, we see only a tiny little sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's like if you owned a grand piano in your house, but you could only hear one note on it. Normally, carbon dioxide gas is invisible to the human eye, but certain wavelengths of infrared will be absorbed by gases like CO2 or methane. So that's what's going on here. This camera has a very particular color filter on it, enabling us to visualize the CO2 gas that's coming out of our noses and mouths.
We have two cameras. One camera that sees what your eye sees, and the other, what the fossil fuel companies don't want the rest of the world to see, the carbon dioxide world. Students want coming at us.
I mean, it's interesting, but it's beautiful. On the left here?
Real slow here.
Slow.
Slow. Wow. that we do is carbon dioxide. The way we heat, air condition our houses, the way we do our transportation systems, whether it's planes, trains, or automobiles. Just about everything pumps out vast amounts of carbon dioxide. But you can't see it. To see this hidden world was like, you know, that in on this magic trick. But the magic trick actually killed the planet. This looks like a big parade of crap.
So where are you working on, buddy? This is what's the path here?
It's close.
Oh, right here. I can spend.
It's carbon dioxide.
I mean, what the government hiring you? Who's doing it? You just doing it alone thing or what? Science project.
In many ways, our generation is one of the last hand on the throttle that just pushes that throttle down. With so much carbon dioxide, and so much methane into the atmosphere, it's quite possible to think about it, that the baby boom generation itself is the single most impactful generation of mammal the planet has ever seen.
The advocacy, things around that are changing, the chemistry of the ocean. The advocacy means that what happens to this planet is now in our own hands. When you take any drop off the ocean anywhere, and you look under a microscope, there's so much beauty there on its tiny scale, it is miniature architecture that I never tire of looking at.
Our first speaker is Boris Worm, and he's published a number of important and controversial papers in recent years on the decline of phytoplankton.
When I give a talk on plankton, I say, first of all, let's take a breath and let's take a second breath, and then contemplate the fact that that second breath came from the ocean, because it was produced ultimately by phytoplankton, which produced half of the oxygen we breathe.
We're aware that we are changing the ocean at a global scale. There's multiple human impacts ranging from fishing to climate change and acidification, implying that no part of the ocean is free from human impact.
Using satellite imagery and other data, Dr. Worm determined that we may have lost 40% of plankton production in just the last 50 years.
It's happening primarily as a consequence of climate change, and there is a lot of controversy because it's a big question. If this plankton decline turns out to be as dramatic as we think it is, then that would be a big deal.
Your life depends on the oceans you live in. And in fact, animals could only exist on land after plankton in the oceans had produced enough oxygen for them to live by.
We have this illusion that the big things in the environment that count. But if you lose the small things, everything else fails. It's like there's this incredible web where we're all connected. You could take out one little thing, let's say that plankton, everything, the whole web collapses.
It's like having a symphony. One by one, you just pluck each of the instruments out of the orchestra. So your last voice was there. globally, most of them will try to protect these species. We say to 600, possibly even more a year. That's the process.
Paul found this guy, Mr. Lee, one of the biggest smugglers of endangered sharks in the world. They had 3 protected species of sharks: basket sharks, great whites, and whale sharks.
I said had possible business opportunity to buy omega-3 oils from.
What do I need to know about fish oil?
So look, we need 100% confirmation that it's a good product. And then you ask for samples.
I was going to play it like a little bit angry, but that's the computer trying to pass the black. We're not operating out of the US. I can take a look at where that's your call.
Charcoal has been used for omega-3, but these sharks and traders are endangered and protected in China and internationally.
The only law that we really have to protect endangered species is CITES. CITES is the Convention for International Trade in Endangered Species. And there's only a few hundred animals that are actually on that list. And part of the reason is because the people that control CITES are actually in the trade of selling them.
Head of this CITES conference, a new decision-making mechanism to set up a centralized system for the resumption of the international trade in elephant ivory.
The economy's been down, it's taken a while to get people interested. Mr. Sawyer is very interested.
Is it the first quality is skincare or?
Can we take a very small sample back of,
Just let you know, last time we did give the some.
I didn't test it, but we need to have my people test it. I'm not gonna be sending like I don't know who your lab is, I mean, sorry, just be my lab.
Can I just borrow Louis for 1 second? Yeah, just one second so we can, just the one we want to know about. Yeah.
Yeah, the extra tap back. I just want to make sure that 5 years from now, we don't have problems with people saying, oh, well, you pushed out all the whale shows.
We walked up the step and looked into the process, and there was whale sharks chopped to bits all over the floor. So we just walked in, started photographing. Then we sent out a press release to the world's media. It went viral at National Geographic, Time Magazine, BBC. They just went everywhere. The Chinese government are doing a lot at the moment for endangered species.
Yeah, the French died.
And sharks being sued, but land grabs. And things are all moving in the right direction. So I just hope they can be proactive with Mr. Lee. We get down about it, but there's life.
You don't think that people are changing. So we are on our way to stop this threat. Within our lifetime, everything can change a little bit. That's already worked.
It's really easy for us to look east and say, look what China's doing. They're destroying the planet. They're polluting everything. They're wiping out species. West is already doing an incredible job. massively depleting and damaging.
All right, Jake.
What, are you done?
Well, Shay's done. I'm going to bark. I'm done. I'm done. Shay's done. I'm going to go to bed now. So your ass must fucking bitty bitty bounce. Bitty bitty bounce off my bitty bed. What?
You only have one
Only have one what?
Off
Off the pop? Have it. I'm good. I'm saying creamy ball sugar.
Huh?
Oh, you're my red meat. What? My red mouse?
Oh, I didn't understand what the fuck. Yes, man.
Yes.
Too sexy. Look at Lola's stupid fucking song.
Can you like that?
Well, you literally just walked by them. Yes, those.
Yeah.
Can I shut Ostrich Foot Boy? Oh, can I shut Kura?
Oh yeah.
All that shit saves automatically. And can I shut your live stream off?
Yeah.